Welcome to Son of a Glitch. Join us as we explore some of the internet's craziest glitch stories. Story 1. I didn't go to the library looking for a sign. I went because the baby had been fussy all morning. My brain felt like warm oatmeal, and the storytime corner has that faded rug that smells like crayons and hand sanitizer and makes all the toddlers go temporarily soft. It was supposed to be a low-stakes outing. Return 2 board books with bite marks. Let my 6-month-old gnaw on a teether shaped like a giraffe, scroll mindlessly while pretending I'm the kind of mother who does activities. But I need to tell this the way it really began, which was 4 months ago, in a dream that did not feel like a dream. In it, I didn't have my daughter. The house was the same, the mess was the same, my fiancé was the same, but there was a gap where she should have been, the kind of gap that pulls the whole room toward it. Instead, we'd decided to foster. We'd been waiting and waiting for a call, and finally one came. It was for a baby girl. Her name, this is important, started with the same letter as my real daughter's name, an R. Not a common R like Riley or Ruby. A rare one of those, oh that's pretty, I've never heard it names. In the dream, the caseworker said it like she already lived in our mouths. When we brought her home in the dream, my body did something I don't have the right verbs for. It rearranged itself around her. She was the same size as my real daughter, same soft cheeks, same pale blue eyes like summer glass. In the dream I kept thinking, absurdly, she would get along so well with my daughter, and then catching on that snag, don't say that aloud. Because in that dream, when I said it to the caseworker anyway, she would get along so well with my daughter. The woman looked straight at me with a face like a shut door and said, "Don't you talk about your daughter here. She does not exist." I woke up with those words still pressed on my chest. For days, I moved through the house like there was an echo running 5 seconds behind me. I told my fiancé about the dream, described the way the foster baby's name sat on my tongue like a coin, the way she fit against my shoulder like she'd always been there. I laughed it off because that's what you do when you're exhausted and hormonal, and saying, I had a dream about a baby that wasn't ours starts to sound like an omen. But the name didn't leave. A few times a week since then, I would say out loud randomly, I wonder how she's doing, meaning a child who did not exist. So library. The big window light, the thump of tiny shoes, the librarian with a scarf shaped like a fox. My daughter, 6 months and 3 days old, is gummy and distractible. I prop her on my hip, we dance to the wheels on the bus. We clap, I check my phone, I make eye contact with a grandpa in a fishing hat and smile that, we are both tired smile. He is holding a baby. I don't see her at first. I see the hat, the hand patting the diaper bag, the older sister trailing him, dragging a book she clearly wasn't supposed to remove from the shelf. Then the baby lifts her head. You know how a room can go quiet to you even when it's not? That. She is the child from my dream. Not similar. Not, oh, babies all look like potatoes. The same. Same iris color that is a little too blue for real life. Same small upturned nose that looks like a comma. Same way she tips her head when she studies a face. A copy-paste girl, but breathing, but blinking, but here. I feel something electric move under my skin. I must have made a sound because the grandpa looks up and smiles again, friendly, oblivious, and I do the normal thing. I say how cute she is, I ask how old. She just had her first birthday, he says, beaming. 3 days ago. I nearly drop my phone. I say in a totally even voice not matching the free fall inside me. Oh, my daughter turned 6 months 3 days ago. Exactly double. The math slots into place like a key turning. The dream had her at the same age as my real daughter then. She would be exactly 6 months ahead now. Happy half-birthday, he says, chuckling. And I laugh too because what else do you do standing in the children's section being quietly rearranged by fate? I ask, what's her name? He says it. The R name from my dream. The rare one. The one that has been living in my mouth for 4 months. The coin falls onto the table with a ringing sound only I hear. After that, things happen around me, kids singing, someone crying, the librarian doing the 5 little ducks, but the only thing I can feel is the magnetic pull coming off this child. It is not just that she is cute. It is not especially that she seems to prefer to look at me. It's that when the grandpa sets her down, she makes a beeline on those toddling legs around the pile of beanbags and straight to me, ignoring her sister's call, ignoring the basket of soft blocks, ignoring everything except my knees. She plants her hands on my jeans and looks up like she's found a thing she put down and forgot. Hi, I whisper ridiculous like we're conspirators. My daughter, on my hip, leans toward her and giggles like she knows the joke too. Grandpa smiles. She's friendly, he says. He does not know I am trying not to cry. He doesn't know that inside my ribs someone has flipped a switch labeled alternate life. I want to say everything at once. I want to tell him I know his granddaughter's name from a universe where she lived in my guest room and drank my formula and slept on my chest during football games. I want to ask if she is in foster care, if he is the visitation grandpa, if her mother is well, if her caseworker is kind, if she likes strawberries, if sometimes at night she wakes up with that piercing single-note cry and then sighs back to sleep like mine does. I want to say, I think she belongs to me in a way that makes no sense, and I am not here to take her. I just need you to know I dreamed her into the shape she already is. I say none of it, because what if I am wrong? What if she is not a bridge between timelines, but simply a lovely little girl whose grandparents bring her to the library, and I am a stranger with wet eyes and an unhinged story? And even if I am right, especially if I am right, what right do I have to lay that on an old man in a fishing hat and make him go home and stare at his wall and wonder if some woman is wandering around town claiming pieces of his granddaughter? People deserve to have their babies without me trying to fold my dream into their lives. So I smile. I ask how old the older sister is. We chat about how kids can smell when you're tired, and then they sprint harder. He tells me they come to story time every Thursday when he has them. I tell him, truthfully, that it's our second time at this branch. He says their schedule changed recently. He tells the baby to wave bye-bye, and she does, that open-handed whole-arm flap that kills me every time. When they leave, the air around me feels thin like it does at altitude. I sit in the corner with my child and pretend to nurse her so I can cry behind a burp cloth. I text my fiancé, she's here. He sends a question mark. I type the name. He texts back a skull, and then no way. Then what did you do? I type, nothing. I said hi. I didn't tell them. I can't tell them, right? He sends back, please don't accost grandpas at the library with time travel mom energy. I laugh out loud, a weird animal sound. I tuck my daughter's sock back on her foot, which she has wiggled free again, because some things are the same in every universe. At home, while she naps, I replay the morning like surveillance footage. The timing, exactly 3 days after my daughter's 6 months, exactly 3 days after her first birthday. The name, the face, the way she made a small, serious O with her mouth before she smiled. My dream baby did that, too. I scroll through my camera roll to that night. I typed the dream details into notes at 3 a.m. Name, I wrote. Caseworker said don't say my daughter, she doesn't exist. Felt like block between worlds. I read it over and over until the text loses meaning. People always want a purpose for things. I do too. I want this to be a message that I did something right, or that I'm supposed to do something more. I want to be told, yes, you were her mother somewhere, and you took good care of her, and now you get to see that she's okay here. I want to be given permission to feel the love that surged up for a stranger's child without having to explain it in English that makes sense. But maybe the point is smaller and bigger at once. Maybe the point is that our lives run like rivers with many channels, and sometimes, in the turns, they run beside each other close enough to see. Maybe once in a blue sky Thursday, 2 versions of one love drift within waving distance in the children's section and recognize each other with their whole bodies. Maybe that is all I get. If you're waiting for some neat ending where I corner the grandpa next week and confess, you will be disappointed. I won't. I can't. The ethics of that are wrong, and I am not trying to adopt a family at story time. I will probably go back on Thursdays. I will probably be polite and normal and ask about naps. I will probably be unremarkable. I will keep the rest in the private part of my chest where dreams stick. When I tucked my daughter in that night, I whispered the other little girl's name to the dark and told both of them good night. I said, you are loved wherever you are. I didn't specify the coordinates. I don't think I needed to. Story 2. I live out the back of town, past the last letterbox, and the bit where the road forgets its tar seal and turns into gravel again. We've got 4 scrappy paddocks, a line of macrocarpas that moan when the nor'wester gets up, 2 grumpy ewes that hate me unless I'm holding a feed bucket, a ragtag team of chooks, and my pride at the moment, a little covey of quail I raised from orphaned eggs. I'm ex-wildlife rehab, used to work with the DOC lot and a couple of sanctuaries up north before we moved down this way. I've tube-fed caribou with busted crops, wrapped 2A in tea towels to get fishing hooks out of their gullets, stitched up gulls that thought number 8 wire was spaghetti. You learn bird body language fast when you're trying to keep them alive, the way a pukiko puffs, the tilt that says I'll bolt, the the low throat chatter that means something's not right. You also learn how often the internet gets it wrong about animals acting weird. Most of the time, it's just animals being animals. So I'm not woo-woo. I don't see ghosts in the hedgerow. That's why I can tell you, hand on heart, what I filmed the other morning was not normal. It was one of those crisp, bright Southland mornings where the sky is all polished bone, and the frost still holds under the shadow of the trough. I did the rounds, opened the chook run, swore at the ewes for knocking their water over again, checked the rat traps in the shed. The quail pen is at the far side of the chook yard, a long low run we built out of aviary mesh and old timber, with tussock and flax stuffed in for cover. The little guys are California quail, mostly escaped garden birds long before my time, but a few look like they had some brown quail in the family photo too. They're about 8 weeks now, not quite grown, not quite dumb babies either, little dumbbells with legs, all bustle and squeak. They know my voice. I don't mean that in a Disney way, they've just learned human shouting means grub's arriving. I always sing out the same words so they settle. It's grub time. And they come like marbles poured out of a jar, pinging out from tussocks and shadows. That day I had a dish of mealworms and a handful of silver beet. I stuck my phone under my chin because my sister in Welly keeps asking for videos. Show me the tiny idiots, please. And I like to send her clips so she remembers there's a world outside the motorway. I walked along the run, camera pointing through the mesh, and did the call. It's grub time. They raced out like always, dozens of them, all that dot-dash motion, little top knots bobbing. They hit the middle where I normally throw the worms. And then they stopped. Not slowed. Not hunkered. Stopped. It was like someone lifted the needle off the record. A full covey mid-scamper just went statue. Tiny feet frozen mid-step, some with toes barely touching the dirt, heads up like a dozen little periscopes suddenly striking the same height. Even the wind seemed to clock it. The flax blades that had been whispering settled. Nothing moved except my breath steaming, and, swear to God, one single delinquent chick off to the right who kept pecking like he hadn't got the memo. I've seen fear freeze. I've seen that shoe hawk flattening where every back goes from hill to plain in half a second. That comes with a sound, somebody gives a hiss or a trill, and it's messy, eh? One bolts, two hold, one jumps and lands, somebody sneezes and ruins it. This wasn't that. No alarm call. No flattening. No scatter. Just a perfect full stop. Like the render engine for quail movement crashed. I kept filming because what else do you do? Mate, I said into the mic, trying to laugh but my voice came out thin. Look at 'em, they've bloody glitched. I waited for the spell to break. It didn't, not for a good 3 seconds, which is a long time when your brain is measuring it with your own heartbeat. Then, like a breath out, the little bodies unlocked. They shuffled, shook, trilled, and did the usual scrum for worms. I swore I could hear my pulse in my ears. I tossed the dish and backed away slow. Pawaka Waka flicked in the macrocarpa behind me, cheeky wee thing, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. When I got back to the kitchen, I made a cuppa with that hands-shaking slop that wastes half your milk. I sent the clip to my sister with, "Watch this, swear I didn't edit." She replied, LOL NPC bird's face with tears of joy, in about 10 seconds, because that's how the internet works now. I laughed on the outside, and on the inside something cold sat down. I told myself to be sensible. Maybe there was a harrier above I didn't spot. Maybe my shadow hit them funny. Maybe the wind pushed the mesh, and they saw it as a wall. Maybe my "it's grub time" hit some frequency my ears don't clock, but theirs do. I'm not above being wrong. So I did what any rehabber would do. I reviewed the footage like it was a trail cam, frame by frame. My phone records at 60 frames per second. You can scrub along with your thumb, stall on any little slice of time. I slid along and watched them come like marbles. Slide scrape, frozen. Slide scrape, moving again. I went back. Slide scrape. I tapped to advance, tap tap tap. There's a frame where you can see one chick's foot barely kissing the dirt, shadow perfect, grain of the soil. You could carve a statue from it. And then because I'm obsessive and this didn't feel like normal, I zoomed in on their eyes. If you've ever looked after birds, you know about eyes. Bright and round equals well. Dull and half shut equals not. We look for catchlight too, the little white glint that shows moisture and alertness. Usually on a sunny day, you'll see it where the sun angle puts it. East-facing birds will have the dot on one side. West-facing other. If they're at different distances, different heights, it won't match. That's basic optics. In one frame, every visible eye reflects the same pinpoint of white light. Every angle, every position, Even the wee delinquent over on the right, who hadn't frozen yet, and had his head down. If you can see the eye, it has the dot. It's in the same place relative to the pupil, like someone drew it on with the same stamp. I don't have a ring light. I don't have anything shiny set up near the pen. It was bright daylight. No flash. No torches. The macrocarpa throws dapple, not one clean beam. And still stamped dots. Identical. I backed out of the clip and stared at my chapped knuckles like maybe they could offer anything. Then I went back in, convinced I was being daft. I scrolled to the frame before. Catchlights are all over. Some eyes have none, some have 2 tiny slivers, all in different places like you'd expect. Scroll 1 frame forward, the freeze. Every dot matches. 1 frame after, chaos again. Eyes like normal. How do you explain that? How do you explain identical catchlights in a flock all facing slightly different angles in broad daylight, for the exact span of the freeze and not a heartbeat more? I didn't post that part. Already the comments were full of predator freeze, and you startled them, and LOL NPC birds. I didn't need fake ring light, or she edited it. I left it as a glitchy wee video to give my mates a laugh. But that night I lay in bed listening to the macrocarpas complain and thinking about matching eyes. Next morning I tried to replicate it. Same time, same call, same dish. It's grub time. They came like marbles and did quail things. No freeze. I clapped softly once, nothing. I shadowed them, 2 scattered, 3 trilled, the rest ignored me. I tried the stupidest thing, and said the same words in the same tone as the day before. Nothing. Which is good, by the way. I don't actually want my birds to turn into statues when I speak like some budget witch. But there's a part of me that wanted cause and effect. Animals are comfortingly cause and effect. For a week I watched them closer. I kept an eye out for harriers. I moved slow. I talked to them like an idiot. We went back to normal. The usual bickering, the jerky trots, the one delinquent who always finds a way to be where he shouldn't. I started to feel silly for how my stomach had dropped. Then on day 8, just as I was letting the chooks out, a carrer barreled through the macrocarpas and clipped a branch with a noise like a rugby tackle. The quail did a proper fear flatten. Every back to ground, a couple of pweep, alarms, dust puffs. Textbook. Messy. Alive. And I felt relief I didn't know I'd been waiting for. This was behavior I could name. Sometimes I think about that frame though, the stamped catchlights. I've told myself a dozen stories. Maybe the phone's processing did something funny and lined the highlights up for a blink. Maybe a car windscreen out on the gravel road kicked a sunflash through the mesh just right. Maybe some optical quirk happened I'm not clever enough to name. And maybe, and I don't like this one but it sits with me anyway, maybe for 3 seconds the mechanism that decides move/don't move in small feathered bodies slipped into the same slot across 50 little skulls at once, and whatever looks out through eyes took the same note at the same time, and the stamp that puts the spark on living things pressed down like a rubber seal. I keep feeding them. I keep calling, it's grub time, and I keep my tone light so the animals don't feel my nonsense. The delinquent still pecks like he'll peck his way to Australia. The ewes still hate me. The macrocarpas still moan. It's all ordinary. Story 3. The first time he came to my flat in Sea Point, the southeaster was pumping so hard my sliding door hummed like a cheap saxophone. I'd done my best to make the lounge look cute, fairy lights, a scrubbed second-hand coffee table, a scatter of thrifted cushions on my very average gray couch. He stood there with his hands in his pockets like he didn't quite know where to put the rest of himself. Then he saw the pillow. He went quiet. Not the I like your decor quiet. His shoulders tightened, the color slipped out of his face. He took 2 steps and then another one, like a tide was pulling him, and he picked it up with both hands. Where did you get this? He asked. AG, that one? I said, laughing because I always laugh when I'm nervous. OBS charity shop. Like a year? 2. Before lockdown, Mose. Why? He didn't answer. He just ran his fingers over the ugly, beautiful fabric, big gold roses and teal leaves, and these little black dots that look like someone fell asleep on the velvet with a cigarette. Heavy. Old-fashioned. The kind of cushion your would put plastic over. I bought it because it was loud and cheap, and I thought, if you can't have a whole life yet, at least you can have one audacious pillow. My gran had this couch, he said at last. Not just like this. This one. This pattern. He flipped the pillow, checked the piping, checked the back. Exactly this. I made a joke because that's what you do when a man you've known 3 weeks is holding your scatter cushion like it's a live grenade. JYC now we soulmates, nah? fated by the Department of Home Affairs and Upholstery. He didn't laugh. He sat down and put the pillow on his lap and pressed his palms into it like you test bread for freshness. I haven't seen this in 25 years. We used to sleep on it during load shedding. Well, back then it was just power cuts, not shedding like now. A soft smile tugged at his mouth, but his eyes were somewhere else. Her house smelled like Yardley lavender and, I don't know, sunlight soap and something fried. We grew up in different provinces, him in Peter Maritzburg, me in the flats, and we'd only matched because my cousin sat on my phone at a Bray and swiped right on everyone. It felt impossible, and also perfectly like Cape Town, where the mountain photobombs, every second Tinder pic, and everyone knows your ex's landlord. There must have been 1,000 of these couches, I said, trying to make it smaller, safer. All the tannies had them. The aunties. It was the law. He didn't answer me. He lay back and tucked the pillow under his head the way a kid would, and he closed his eyes for exactly 4 breaths. When he opened them again, he looked the way a person looks when they've been in the sea and come out a little stunned, salt in their lashes. "Can I show you something?" he asked. 2 days later he messaged a photo. The kind with the white border, sun-flashed and slightly yellow, scanned crooked. Him, maybe 7, in a school jersey that was too big, skinny knees, one sock falling down. A woman next to him whose smile pulled her whole face into kindness, a cheeky dimple like a thumbprint. Behind them the couch, my couch's loud cousin. Those same mustard gold roses and teal leaves, the same black flecks like ash. And there, under his grandmother's arm, half in shadow, that exact pillow. My pillow. The same corner seemed slightly skew. I zoomed in until the pixels broke into squares. "Nay, man," I whispered, alone at my kitchen counter. "Nay, dismal." He came over that night with a shoebox full of more pictures. We sat on the floor and sorted them into piles, Christmas, birthdays, random Tuesday with blackouts. His grand's house was the same in all of them. Curtains too long, pot plants struggling bravely, a picture of Jesus with eyes that followed you. That couch in all its glory. He told me stories like you tell a story when you're checking to see if your own memory will hold. "My dad was loud," he said. "You know." He didn't say more, and he didn't have to. The way his hands hovered above the photos told me the rest. My grand's place was safe. If you got there, you could breathe again. He lifted the pillow onto his lap and held it there while he talked. I noticed his shoulders had dropped. That little band of tension that lives at the base of his skull had loosened. He was a boy and a man at the same time, and I fell a little more in love with both. After that, the pillow became a joke and a sacrament. He'd come in and fling himself down and say, "Move, I need my therapy cushion." I'd say, "Yissus, I must charge it first," and pretend to plug it into the wall. At Bryce, I'd tell our friends, we met because of the couch, and he'd roll his eyes and kiss my forehead. Some nights he'd fall asleep on it in front of some terrible series, jaw unclenched, the little lines beside his mouth smoothing out like someone ironed him. And then the first weird thing happened. It was a Tuesday, because I remember I'd only washed my hair to feel like I was doing something with my life, and Tuesdays are my little treat days. I woke at 2 a.m. to the wind banging the balcony door. I got up to wedge a towel under it, and the kitchen was dark and full of the sound of everything settling. The fridge making its old man clicks, the palm on the street scratching the window. When I walked back through the lounge, I smelled perfume. Not mine. Not the cheap vanilla coconut that lives in my handbag. Something powdery and precise, the kind of thing they keep behind glass at Clicks. Lavender, but not fresh garden lavender, old lady pretty. And hairspray. And something like starch? I stood there for a full minute like an idiot sniffing the dark. Then I realized it was the pillow. I lifted it to my face and the smell flooded me. I don't know how to explain what happened next without sounding like one of those WhatsApp Andes, but the flat seemed to tilt, like I was on a boat and a wave passed under us. I put the pillow down and went back to bed. I didn't mention it in the morning, because why would I? You don't start your day with "your grand's ghost came to freshen up my lounge." Also because I'm not trying to be that girlfriend. A week later I dreamt a dream that didn't feel like mine. You know, the ones that are too specific, like a place you've been before, not the jumbled nonsense your brain normally cooks. I was in a little kitchen that smelled like fried polony and handy Andy. Yellow light. Linoleum curling up at the edges. The power out so often there were candles ready, the good ones saved in a drawer and the stubby cast-offs in an old peanut butter jar. I heard a child crying in the bathroom, that hiccuping cry where your chest is a drum. A man's voice in another room, loud and then louder. And over everything a woman humming. Not words. A tune like church but softer, one that hangs just behind your ear. I woke with the pillow under my cheek and the taste of candle smoke in my mouth. I told him, "You can't not tell, not when your dreams start borrowing other people's furniture." He was quiet while I spoke, eyes on the pillow like it might answer. "That song," he said at last. "Hum it." "I can't hum to save my life." I tried, embarrassed, half humming the absence of it. He closed his eyes and finished the phrase for me. "My gran used to hum that when she did the dishes. When it was bad. We didn't say haunting. We didn't go by sage. We're colored. We know when not to make a noise about something that clearly doesn't want fanfare. We just carried on." Story 4. I'm literally just going to copy and paste part of another one of my comments here, because it's still, to this day, the most inexplicable thing that's ever happened to me. I've had a few odd stories, some weird little moments that I still can't explain, but this one tops them all. The other strange stories involve a giant neon-colored broom and an incident with popcorn, but this one has haunted me for years. It started on a completely ordinary winter morning. I was driving with my 2 kids, my son, who was 3 at the time, and my daughter, still an infant. He sat in the very back of the van, in his car seat, and she was in the middle row, in hers. It was one of those cold but clear days. No snow, no ice, just that dry winter air that makes everything smell faintly metallic. Before leaving the house, I remember very clearly trying to get my son to wear his shoes. He was having none of it. You know how 3-year-olds are, stubborn about the strangest things. He screamed bloody murder when I tried to get the shoes on, full meltdown mode, tears flailing, the works. Finally, I gave in and grabbed his boots instead. For some reason, boots were fine. He was completely happy with those. So boots it was. I can see the image of them in my head even now, small, brown, slightly scuffed, with a little zipper on the side. We walked straight out to the van, and I strapped both kids into their seats. It's a short drive, less than 10 minutes to the grocery store. The whole way there, I could see my son in the rearview mirror, happily chattering to himself, kicking his legs a little, boots and all. Everything was normal. Then we got to the store. I parked, unbuckled my daughter, and went around to get my son out. That's when I noticed it. He wasn't wearing his boots. He was sitting there in his socks. At first, I thought maybe I was losing my mind. I checked the floor under his seat, nothing. I checked beside the car seat, behind it, under it, no boots. The boots were just gone. The windows in the back of my van don't open at all. Neither do the middle ones. Only the front windows open, and since it was winter, I hadn't rolled those down. I hadn't stopped anywhere, hadn't opened any doors besides the driver's and the sliding one to get the kids in. There was simply no way the boots could have gone anywhere. I looked all over the van in the grocery store parking lot, even under the front seats, just in case. No luck. I checked outside the van, thinking maybe somehow he'd kicked them off when I opened the door. Nothing. No sign of them anywhere. Obviously, we couldn't go shopping. He couldn't walk around a grocery store in socks in the middle of winter. So we headed back home. That drive back was tense. My son was humming to himself, completely unfazed, and I was gripping the wheel, running through every possible explanation in my head. None of them made sense. When we got home, I decided I wasn't giving up until I found those boots. What started as a quick search turned into a full investigation. It wasn't even about getting to the grocery store anymore. It was the principle of the thing. Those boots existed. I had put them on his feet with my own 2 hands. I was not going to be gaslit by the universe. I tore that van apart. I removed both car seats. I took out the removable seats themselves. I searched every inch, under the seats, between them, under the mats, in the cup holders, the storage compartments, the seat pockets, even the tiny crevices where coins fall and never come out. I opened the trunk, lifted the floor panel, checked the spare tire compartment. I even looked under the van, thinking maybe they'd somehow fallen out and gotten stuck underneath. Nothing. Not even one boot. I went back and retraced my steps between the front door and the van. Maybe I dropped them before we even left. I checked the porch, the driveway, even the snow-free patch of concrete leading to the car. Still nothing. At that point, I was more exasperated than scared. I remember standing in my driveway, holding a baby in one arm, and just staring at the van like it was personally mocking me. I'd lost socks, pacifiers, toys, even a car key once, but never a pair of boots that had been physically strapped onto a child moments earlier. 20 minutes turned into nearly an hour of searching, and still, the boots never reappeared. It wasn't until later that evening, after I'd cooled off, that the weirdness of it really sank in. The doors had never opened. The windows were sealed. The boots couldn't have gone anywhere without me noticing. And yet, they were gone. To this day, I've never found them. Not in the van, not at home, not even months later when I cleaned the car again from top to bottom. Just gone. Every so often, I still think about those boots. It's funny. You expect mysteries in life to be grand and meaningful, but sometimes they're just little, stupid things that make no sense at all. And for me, it'll always be those goddamn boots. Story 5. It was unexplained for a little bit, and to this day it still sits in my memory as one of the most surreal moments of my life. At the time, it felt less like a health problem and more like I'd somehow slipped sideways out of reality. As far as I know, it was an actual glitch. I remember I was driving home from, well, I think it was the bookstore. I'm not even sure now. The details of the day are fuzzy around the edges except for that drive, which is burned into my memory. It was late afternoon, the sun low enough to cast those long shadows across the road, and traffic was light. I had the radio on low, just some background noise, and I wasn't tired or stressed or anything. It was just an ordinary drive on an ordinary day. Then I noticed something strange. The street signs were wrong. At first, it was subtle enough that I thought my eyes were just tired. The letters on a sign didn't look right. A stop sign I passed didn't say stop, it said STP. The O was just gone. Not faded, not smudged, not covered up. Gone. I blinked a few times, shook my head, and kept driving. Then I noticed it again. Another sign missing a letter. Then another. It wasn't just signs either. Other things I glanced at began missing parts too. Billboards, shop names, even license plates seemed off. Letters were missing, shapes slightly incomplete, as if someone had taken a pair of scissors and snipped pieces out of the world. But there weren't any gaps where the missing parts should have been. Everything just compacted around the absence, seamless but wrong, like reality was a piece of paper that had been folded over to hide things from view. That's the best way I can describe it. Like someone was folding the edges of my perception, tucking letters and bits of shapes behind a crease. The world still looked solid, still felt real, but I could tell something wasn't right. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, forcing myself to focus on the road. My heart was starting to race, but I knew panicking while driving would only make things worse. Every sign I passed felt like a test, like my brain was glitching. I scanned them automatically, trying to catch the missing pieces before they vanished. Some words looked like nonsense. Others looked fine at first, but then shifted, like my brain was struggling to fill in the blanks. I don't remember much of the drive itself, except for the growing dread. My knuckles were white on the wheel. My mouth was dry. Every instinct told me to pull over, but a louder voice in my head said, just get home. When I finally pulled into my driveway, it felt like surfacing from deep water. I parked the car, turned off the engine, and sat there for a moment, breathing hard. The world outside the windshield still looked folded and clipped in places. Even the numbers on my mailbox looked slightly wrong. Then I stepped inside the house. It was like someone flipped a switch. Everything was normal again. Letters were back where they belonged. Shapes were solid. My vision wasn't distorted anymore. The sudden return to normality was almost as unnerving as the distortion itself. I remember thinking, what the hell just happened? For a few minutes, I actually wondered if I'd hallucinated the whole thing, if maybe I'd zoned out and imagined it. But then the headache hit. Calling it a headache doesn't even do it justice. It was the worst headache of my entire life. A stabbing, pulsing pain that felt like someone was tightening a band around my skull. Light hurt. Sound hurt. I had to sit in the dark with my eyes closed and just breathe through it. Yep. My first migraine ever. I'd heard people talk about migraines before. The aura they describe. Colors flashing, blinking lights, little smudges or blind spots that impair your vision. I'd heard about nausea, sensitivity to light, even dizziness. But no one had ever mentioned a symptom could be reality warping around you like a broken computer screen. That's what it felt like, a glitch. Like reality wasn't stable, and for a few minutes I'd been allowed to peek at whatever was underneath. The missing letters, the folded spaces, the sense that parts of the world had been clipped away, it was so specific, so vivid, that even now I have trouble believing it was just a migraine. Luckily, I've only had one other migraine since then, years apart from the first. That one was different, flashing lights, weird blotches, but nothing like the folded reality episode. That first one still stands alone. Sometimes I think about how easily I could have lost control of the car that day. How I managed to drive home at all while my perception was twisting like that is beyond me. I didn't tell anyone at the time because it felt too strange, too impossible to explain. Now looking back, I know migraines can manifest in bizarre ways. I know the brain can produce some incredible illusions when it's under stress or disrupted. But even with that knowledge, a small part of me still wonders. Because for a few miles on a quiet road one afternoon, it really did feel like reality had glitched. Story 6. My dad passed away in 2013. It was sudden, one of those moments that splits time cleanly into before and after. My mom was completely shattered. For weeks she couldn't even bring herself to sleep in their bed, and when she finally did, she slept on the far edge, like the other half of the mattress still belonged to him. In their bedroom, there's a large walk-in closet, my dad's closet. It used to be his domain. He worked in finance and always dressed the part, crisp shirts, tailored suits, polished shoes lined up neatly against the wall. The scent of his cologne used to linger in there, a sharp, clean smell that always made me think of mornings, him adjusting his tie in the mirror, the faint hiss of his aftershave bottle, the jingle of cufflinks. After he died, my mom couldn't go in there. Not once. She kept the door closed for 4 years. Every now and then she'd walk past it, her hand brushing the knob as if she might open it, but she never did. She said she wasn't ready to face the smell, or the sight of his things, or the feeling that he might still be there somehow. Finally, last year, she decided she couldn't avoid it forever. She told me she'd woken up one morning, and just felt ready. Or maybe not ready, but resigned. She said it was time to face it. So she opened the closet door for the first time in years. She told me that the moment she cracked it open, the smell hit her like a wave. That same cologne, the one he wore every day for decades, still hung thick in the air, as if he had just left for work that morning. It caught her off guard. She stood there for a long moment, hands still on the doorknob, her throat tight. It wasn't unusual, she told herself. Of course it would still smell like him. His suits were still hanging there, and they'd all been soaked in that scent. His jackets, his ties, even the leather of his shoes probably held traces of it. But knowing that didn't make it easier. The smell was so strong it almost made her dizzy. It was too much. So she turned off the light, closed the door, and walked away. That night, when she was getting ready for bed, she noticed the faint glow under the closet door. The light was on. She cursed herself for forgetting to turn it off, annoyed that she'd have to open the door again. She went over, flipped the switch off, and closed it once more. Later that night, she woke up to use the bathroom. As she walked past the closet, she saw the light was on again. This time she froze. She knew she had turned it off, twice now. She told me she felt her heart start to race, not in fear exactly, but in that unsettled way you feel when something doesn't make sense. Still, she opened the door, turned the light off again, and tried to go back to sleep. The next day, when she came home from work, she saw it again, that glow leaking from the crack under the door. The closet light was on. That was when it really unnerved her. She stood there for a while, staring at the door, not wanting to touch it. Then she went inside, reached up, and unscrewed the light bulb. She said she just couldn't deal with it anymore. The idea that something she couldn't explain was happening in that room. I've thought about it a lot since she told me. I'm not so sure the light was turning on by itself. I have this quiet suspicion that maybe she was doing it unconsciously. Maybe she wanted a reason to open that door again, to step inside and breathe in that smell. Not because she wanted to torture herself, but because that was the only place in the house where he still existed in some way. Maybe turning the light on was her way of keeping that part of him alive just a little longer. As far as I know, the bulb is still unscrewed. She hasn't been back in there since. My wife and I went to visit her last month. She lives in another state now, in that same house, smaller now in the way homes become when the people who filled them are gone. We had dinner, watched a movie, talked about normal things. The closet never came up. And honestly, I never even thought to go in there. Not once. It didn't occur to me to check if the smell was really still there, or if it was just something she imagined, a scent preserved in memory more than air. I didn't think about it until now as I write this. And now that I am thinking about it, I can almost picture it. That closed door at the end of the hall, the faint outline of the frame in the dark. The light inside that shouldn't be on. The air heavy with a scent that shouldn't still exist. It's strange, how grief clings to the smallest things. A smell. A light. A room that stays closed for years because opening it feels like erasing someone.